The morning sun glinted off the carefully manicured hedges as I stepped onto the veranda, clutching my coffee mug like a lifeline. My hands trembled not from cold, but from the knowledge that Karen Beaumont, the self-appointed guardian of every rule and regulation in our neighborhood, had just filed a formal complaint against me for possessing an expired driver's license. She'd cornered me at the community center yesterday, her voice a whip crack in the quiet hallway, accusing me of endangering every resident by allowing an out-of-date ID to pass muster. The memory still stung. Her stubby finger thrust into my chest as she declared, "We can't risk liability on your account." Back then, I'd thought it would be a minor annoyance, a quick trip to the DMV, a little paperwork, and life would resume its peaceful course. Instead, Karen's complaint triggered an emergency board meeting, and overnight I found myself the subject of whispered gossip and raised eyebrows. In those hushed tones I heard the words that cut deepest: disrespect, ungrateful, irresponsible. But beneath the shock and flush of humiliation, a spark of defiance ignited a promise that I would not let this arrogant bully control my life any longer. By midday, I was poring over the HOA's bylaws, uncovering the precise language governing member complaints and board elections. That's when I discovered it. Karen's own nomination for the board had never been properly seconded. The ritual she claimed to have followed last summer was nothing but a charade. A single misplaced signature, and her entire tenure as rules enforcer could be invalidated. My pulse quickened. Here was my chance to turn the tables. Under the guise of requesting a formal hearing to address her complaint, I crafted a motion to review the nomination procedures of all current board members. When I presented it at the next meeting, the room fell silent. Karen's eyes blazed across the table as I laid out the evidence: meeting minutes, unsigned forms, and a glaring gap in her paperwork. A murmur rippled through the assembled neighbors, many of whom had long resented her petty fines and midnight patrols but lacked the courage to speak up. And then came the twist none of us saw coming. As the motion passed by a narrow margin, the community center doors swung open to reveal Mr. Alvarez, our new volunteer counsel, stepping in with a stack of official HOA correspondence. He cleared his throat and announced that a developer had expressed interest in purchasing several lots on the far end of our street, contingent on a streamlined approval process. That developer happened to be a client of his firm, and he'd been quietly moving behind the scenes for months. Our bylaws required the board to disclose any conflicts of interest. Karen, it turned out, had accepted a finder's fee in cash for every lot the developer acquired. Gasps echoed as Alvarez produced bank statements showing Karen's deposits, hundreds of dollars per lot funneled through a shell company she'd set up under the guise of consulting services. The betrayal struck like a hammer. The same neighbor who'd fixed our broken streetlight without fanfare, the same family who'd housed stray cats until they found homes, suddenly rose in applause. The vote to remove Karen from the board was unanimous, accompanied by a chorus of relief. By twilight, I found myself not just reinstated in good standing, but elected vice president of the HOA board, entrusted with safeguarding the community from further abuses. Karen watched from the sidelines, her posture deflated, as I addressed the gathering with firm but compassionate words. "We're here to support one another, not spy on expired documents or seize secret fees. Let's remember why we formed this board: to preserve our neighborhood's spirit and safety." The bitter irony settled in as Karen realized the expired ID complaint had catapulted me into a leadership role I'd never sought but now embraced. She approached me afterward, her voice trembling with reluctance. "You made a mistake." I offered a steady smile. "We all do sometimes." Then I walked away, knowing that justice had been served, and that this community would not soon forget the day their fiercest critic became their latest casualty. The next morning, the air carried an undercurrent of excitement that rippled through every lawn and garden in our little enclave. Rumors of a candidate for HOA president circulated, my name on everyone's lips, not because I'd sought the spotlight, but because I'd dared to expose corruption where it festered. As neighbors greeted me with nods and smiles, I felt a weight shift from my shoulders to the community itself. I remembered the stunned silence at the meeting when Karen's shell company came to light, the disbelief etched on her face as she realized her empire of petty fines and secret kickbacks had crumbled. And yet, amid that collapse, I sensed something deeper at play. Our neighborhood's resilience, our collective refusal to be governed by fear or selfishness. By afternoon, I found myself drafting new guidelines with a handful of fellow residents who'd rallied behind me. We pored over the HOA charter, determined to close loopholes that had allowed Karen's rogue actions to persist. As I read aloud proposals for greater transparency, public disclosure of board member finances, clear processes for nominations, and mandatory conflict of interest statements, I saw pride swell in every face around the table. This was more than policy. It was the rebirth of a community that valued trust over treachery. Yet change bred resistance. That evening I received a terse email from one of Karen's loyalists, citing tradition and accusing me of overreach. His words stung. "You're bulldozing the way things have always been done. Some rules exist to protect, not to profit." I recognized the argument, a familiar refrain from those unwilling to relinquish power. But I refused to be deterred. I penned a calm but firm response. Tradition should never shield wrongdoing. Our bylaws exist to serve every homeowner equally. If protecting means profit for a few, then tradition has lost its way. Late into the night, as cicadas droned outside my window, I drafted a newsletter to send to every homeowner. No hidden agendas, no sugarcoating. I recounted Karen's schemes backed by evidence. I laid out proposed reforms and invited feedback. Above all, I emphasized unity. We cannot undo the past, but we can shape our future together. Hitting send felt like stepping onto a stage, heart pounding, uncertain of the applause or jeers. The next morning my inbox overflowed. Over 50 replies poured in, words of gratitude, constructive suggestions, even apologies from neighbors who'd once remained silent. One message caught my eye. From Mrs. Patel, who'd moved here 2 years ago and stayed out of HOA affairs for fear of backlash. She wrote, "Thank you for giving me a voice. I used to dread board meetings, fearing Karen's wrath. Now I look forward to participating." Her message crystallized why all this mattered. When one person's abuse silences the many, the community's heartbeat falters. Emboldened, I called for a second meeting, this time open to all residents. The community center buzzed with conversation. I watched as families, retirees, and young professionals mingled, once intimidated, now engaged. When the meeting began, I stood before them and shared my vision. An HOA that listens, learns, and leads with integrity. I didn't mention Karen by name. Her absence spoke volumes. Instead, I invited volunteers to join committees on landscaping, finance, and neighbor outreach. Hands shot up, and the room thrummed with possibility. Midway through the discussion, a surprising figure walked in. Officer Reed, the local community liaison. He'd come not to reprimand, but to congratulate us on restoring good governance. He explained that the county had been monitoring our HOA after Karen's complaint about my expired ID triggered a flurry of legal notices. He commended our swift reforms, noting that other associations could learn from our example. His unexpected endorsement sent a wave of applause cascading through the room. As the meeting wrapped, I noticed Karen lingering by the entrance. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her posture slumped. Overcome by a mixture of pity and resolve, I approached her. She clutched a laminated copy of the old bylaws, her fated kingdom. I gently offered her a seat at the restoration committee. "This is your home too," I said. "We need everyone's insight to rebuild." Her gaze flickered, pride warred with regret. After a long pause, she shook her head. "I don't know if I deserve it." I smiled, laying a hand on her shoulder. "People deserve second chances. Our neighborhood deserves unity." She nodded, tears brimming. In that moment, I saw the human behind the Taranta neighbor concerned about order, who'd lost her way. It was the hardest part of justice, balancing accountability with compassion. As she stepped away, I resolved to honor her unspoken hope for redemption by ensuring our reforms offered pathways for anyone, even Karen, to contribute constructively. Over the following weeks, the transformation was astonishing. Fines dropped by 60% as frivolous citations vanished. The annual charity drive for the local animal shelter, once stifled by endless paperwork, was revived under new guidelines. A neighborhood cleanup day brought out more volunteers than ever before, as residents felt empowered rather than policed. And each success fed on the last, sparking pride and goodwill that rippled through block after block. One afternoon, as I walked my dog past the community garden, I saw Karen kneeling beside a rosebush, hands dirted but gentle. She paused when she saw me, offering a shy wave. I returned it, sun warming my back, and continued on, content in knowing that even the fiercest storms can give way to fresh growth. When the next board election arrived, I did not stand for president. Instead, I supported a candidate from the landscaping committee and took on an advisory role, mentoring new leaders. Our bylaws, now fortified against abuse, ensured no single person could ever wield unchecked power again. And as ballots were cast under the shade of oak trees, I realized that the true victory wasn't mine, but ours. A community reclaimed by its people. As dusk settled, strings of lights illuminated our cobblestone paths, and laughter drifted from porch to porch. I paused at the wooden board where it all began, the one photographed for the newsletter now repainted with the words "expired ID? Now she works for me." It was a cheeky reminder of how a petty complaint ignited our collective courage. I gently tapped the sign, thinking of the journey from grievance to reform, from discord to collaboration. In the end, the story wasn't about a single expired ID or a fallen dictator. It was about the power of ordinary neighbors to rewrite their fate. It was proof that when community hearts align, even the smallest spark of defiance can illuminate a path to justice. Now it's your turn. Was I right to confront Karen so publicly, or should forgiveness have come before exposure? Do you believe a community can heal after betrayal? Or do scars of mistrust linger too long? Share your thoughts and join the conversation. Your insight could shape the next chapter in our neighborhood story.